Yay.
Hi, Linz.
Hello.
I'm so happy to have you here. I'm so happy to see you.
I'm so happy to see
I
you.
brought
It's
two
so good to see you.
beverages for the occasion.
Oh
I
my
brought
gosh.
coffee, I brought water. You have tea.
I have tea. There was something I saw on Instagram where all the truth lives of it was like any good woman is surrounded by at
Mhm.
least half a dozen lukewarm beverages.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a lot of water bottles at all times. I limit to 2 cups of coffee. It's 11:05 and I'm going to down this because I like to stop at 11. So, Lindsay, I love you. I am excited to talk to a meditation teacher today who's a friend because I've had a lot. I mean, apologies to Bob Roth, but he's my teacher. This is my friend, Lindsay, and also my friend, Lindsay, who I have sent countless people, friends, clients, etc., to learn meditation and mindfulness with. And I just had this idea like, I want like mindfulness teacher, like real talk. And so here's what I know. We
Mm.
talked about this before the show, and I always like to start recording. This is one of the first times I was like, I'm not gonna. So anyway, so Lindsay's a really dear friend, and she's just had like a hell of a year. I tell you, like a dark fucking year.
Oh, good. We can swear. Thank God. Okay, good.
Dark year. I had a dark year 3 years ago. I remember when I heard you talking about your year, I was like, oh, sister friend, let me know if you want to
Mm,
talk. And you didn't. I was like, oh, I know those too.
yeah.
So I was
Mm.
just thinking about you because I think there's just like we can listen to 8 billion podcasts about the utility of mindfulness and meditation, and we can listen to 8 billion more about how to. And you can even listen to it if you scroll up on what you're craving. But I just want to understand in the most true way that you're able to talk to us about it, which is like when you're in these really dark times of struggle and you have all of these skills, you're a teacher, you know, what happens? So talk us
Mm.
your turn.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, right. I'm like, okay, ready. And
Well, we
just
have about 45 minutes. Maybe we'll have you on 5 times. Maybe this will be a series. Who knows? I got my coffee.
oh,
I don't even want to talk. Just talk me through this.
well, thank you. Thank you for first of all, thank you for having me. I knew I was a little nervous beforehand because I knew I'm like, if I know Molly, we're gonna get into the real, it's not gonna be surface level, like tell us about your book or your website, right? So yeah, so here we are. So I've been practicing mindfulness and mindfulness meditation for about 14 years. And about 5 years into that, I launched my company because I saw the difference it made in a particularly horrible time in my life
Mm.
when the person I loved was sleeping with one of my close friends
Wait, this is like a long time. So
yes,
five,
yes,
wow. So
that was two that was 2014.
so that's when you became a mindfulness and meditation teacher because of a hardship. What made you decide
Yeah.
to like? How did you connect those dots?
Okay, we're gonna get all the stuff out there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a
so
shrink. I
I
mean,
was
this is and Russell, you're
right,
my
of
friend. Like,
course.
yeah, you guys are
Yeah.
always right. Another friend, Randy, came on the show. She's like, yeah, I mean, I just knew I was gonna have to bring the truth to Molly's show. That's what we do here.
Yeah.
It's our
Whew.
love language. Yeah, take a breath.
Yeah. So and just to pause right before this, I actually said a little prayer that I was like, let me just be of service. Whatever I say today, let it be of service. So I hope that whatever I say today helps someone. And me sharing this is that hope that it will help
Oh
somebody.
no, it will. It will. I know that. That's why I asked you. Come on.
And so I was in Atlantic City with an on again, off again love. And I had to borrow his phone for a conference call. And I'm not the girl. I want to preface this by saying I'm not the person who goes through somebody's phone. I don't.
Mhm.
I think that is much. It's very indicative of deeper issues, right? If you need to be going through somebody's phone, something else is going on. But I was using his phone for a conference call. Mine had died, and I saw a text pop up that was like, what? And long story short, it turned out that yeah, he was sleeping with a very good friend of mine. And I mean, this was a very good friend of mine. So it was like a double pain of this is the person I love, and this is also somebody else who I trusted and I had told how I felt about him. And so there was like this deep feeling of betrayal. But I will never forget that I was standing on this balcony at this hotel villa thing in Atlantic City, and I am looking out going like, okay, I could murder him. Option one, murder him. Option two, drink, relapse, right? Because
you're sober.
Listeners that don't know, I'm sober. So I could drink and relapse. And this part, I also say, I don't say this lightly. I mean, I really looked at the balcony and was like, I could jump, like I could.
Oh, side note, that was my first thought. I was like, oh, so I could kill myself. Like, so it's just if I was in that story, I was like, okay, I could jump off this balcony.
Yeah.
I could go get completely obliterated. I think killing him would be my last choice. I don't know.
Honestly, actually, it was.
I love us.
I just didn't want to lead with like the jumping off the balcony. But yeah, that was the first thought, was like, I jump.
That's my first choice. I'd be like, so I should just die now because nothing will work out ever in my life. I go there.
Friend has betrayed me. Love of my life is, I was like, might as well just pew. And in that moment, I remembered a teaching from the meditation training that I was in, which is the acronym STOP, take a breath, observe, proceed. And it seems so simple.
Right.
But I remember in that moment, time stood still and I quite literally stopped and was like, I don't want to do any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm upset. I'm hurt. And I just felt that pain. And then I reached out and called a friend.
Mm.
And that was it.
Mm.
And I remember he was sitting there, the love interest was sitting there kind of like, when are you going to kill me? Like, when is the other shoe going to drop? When are you going to flip out? He was so accustomed to, what I would say a fairly normal response would be of flipping out, at least yelling.
Mm.
And instead we sat down and we had a whole really honest conversation. And I just remember thinking, this is not possible. This is not possible if not for the tools of mindfulness.
Mm.
It was just this very clear feeling of, oh, mindfulness, meditation, these are not just like theoretical, esoteric concepts. This actually worked in real time from preventing me from doing something, I would regret forever. So that was a very pivotal moment. And then saying, okay, if this is working for me, then how do I share it with other people? So very soon after, doing some additional trainings, I launched my company. But I would say the majority of the deepening of my practices happened in horrible, horrible times. But I do look back and I have since said to that ex, like, I am so grateful this happened because I would not have my business if not for that event. It wouldn't have happened. And I think for a lot of us, that's true.
How did you even find like mindfulness because you're saying like in that moment you use that stop skill? That's in DBT. What is that from? What that's from DBT, but where else is that from?
Yeah. So I was in the Mindfulness-Based stress reduction program, the 8-week program. And yeah, there's a lot of overlap between.
Oh yeah. Well, Marsha Linehan's a Zen Buddhist priest. So of course it is. But like, how did you come even to decide to do that? I agree with you. I mean, I always feel like in these times of darkness, it's like grow or die, GOD. It's like trade in my spiritual Chevy for a Cadillac and then a bigger car and then and it's, right. I don't know. This last one was pretty gnarly, but it's like I come out different from it. But
absolutely.
How did you come even to think that you should do mindfulness-based strat? Like, did that come from crisis also?
Well, yes. So backing up even further to another dark time, let's just talk about all of them.
Listen, but thematically, everybody should hear this. Like, it's really, you get to choose what you do in the dark time. Like,
yeah. I got sober at a yoga and meditation center, and it was not intentional, right?
What? Tell me, that's a story. Let me hear that one.
Yep. So I was fired from my dream job as an MBA publicist.
Mm.
And they were like, you might want to look at your drinking. Okay. And I was spiraling out. And my mother, God bless her, said, hey, why don't we go to Kripalu out in Western Mass and spend a
Mm-hmm.
couple days there? And I had no interest in yoga and no interest in meditation, and was like, well, I have literally nothing else going on.
What
So
else? Wait, is that, can I say, I've had so many hangovers at Kripalu, but is that before, I mean, the amount of like binging Kripalu, and I have a very long history, but is that before they had coffee there? Like what year was that?
oh my
Really,
gosh, you remember those times. I say
Lindsay,
this
I used to wake up in the morning at Kripalu, go to Dunkin' Donuts, get like 6 donuts, smoke a cigarette, have like 4 cups of coffee, and then like wonder why I was like so miserable in like yoga and meditation.
I'm telling you, if I had a car, I would have. I didn't have a
Yeah.
car. I
Yeah.
was trapped.
Yeah.
So
That's terrible. Because
I
then
would have,
eventually they brought coffee on, and
yes.
I also had gotten sober and quit smoking and all these other things. But I have years of Kripalu of just like Cheeto bags and cigarette butts, and like then wondering why it isn't working, you know?
Right. Right. No, and this was the second time I had gone there. Apparently, I went some other time that I have like no recollection of. So it was probably more like what you were just describing. On this particular trip, I was trapped there. I would have chewed my arm off for a Diet Coke. I mean, I really would have. And yeah, so my last drink, I didn't know it at the time, but my last drink was on the bus from New York City to Kripalu to Bud Light Tall Boys
Mm,
at 8 a.m.,
yeah.
purchased at Port Authority.
Yeah.
So class
That's
all the
just a
way.
different level of class. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Lest I think I was some, classy cocktail drinker. I remember explaining to the cashier why I was buying these beers at 8 a.m. And he was like, I don't care.
He's like, I don't care at all.
Don't
You're
care.
like, my shame needs you to hear this. But
Yes, 100%. I concocted some whole story of like, oh, well, I'm going to be on the bus this long and there's no rest. And I've been working nights. And he was like, yeah, okay, you got your money. Great. Bye. So yeah, I took the bus out there. I drank on the way there, and something unintentional, but as we call a God shot, happened as I was there, where a woman was leading a meditation that I later came to find out was called the loving kindness metta
mm,
meditation.
mm.
And somehow it just cut through the noise.
Oh,
And
it's so powerful. Wait, do
because
it. Can you teach us it really quickly? It's so good, y'all. I
oh,
wasn't going to
sure,
ask her to bring her skills here, but it's
sure.
so good. Well, of course it cuts through. Just tell us, like,
Yeah.
give us like you can all Google it, but give us I just did it in one of my retreats and it like blew everyone out of the water. And it's so simple. Tell us what it is.
Yeah. Well, so you generally speaking, you can do this a few different ways, but generally speaking, you will offer kindness, boundless friendliness. There's no direct translation of metta, but loving kindness, boundless friendliness, phrases towards yourself, towards a loved one, a benefactor, towards a neutral person, towards a challenging person, and towards the world of all beings without exception. And so you take time, and these phrases can be whatever feels authentic for you, but often it's something along the lines of, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you have peace.
Mm.
and and sometimes it's really interesting, as you move through, you repeat this 3-4 times to each person, and sending it out, not just from this robotic, like, may peace be with you, peace be with you, right? But it's really trying to connect with that offering, this freely given gift. And sometimes for me, it's hardest to give it to myself.
Oh yeah. It's
Sometimes
easier to
it's,
like give to someone I don't like
yeah,
before myself sometimes, sure.
yeah, yeah. Which, so then that's where you can play with it too. And sometimes you can offer that wish towards the benefactor, the person who's maybe like a easy to love, and then you can try to, like a spotlight, turn it around towards yourself.
Mm,
But it's something where that repetition of phrases, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you have peace, may you have ease,
mm.
and just saying that, and with that full-hearted wish, like whatever the challenges that you're facing yourself or with that challenging person, often you can break it down and think, if this person were truly happy, if they were truly of sound mind and healthy, if they had ease and peace in their life, they probably wouldn't be doing the things that are bothering you so.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned that in AA too. You pray for the person that's troubling you. You pray for them to have all the things you would wish for yourself. And I got through it like that. Like I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess they wouldn't be terrorizing me if they
Right.
felt happy, if they had a safe place to live, if they had love in their life, if they had a warmer heart. So anyway, that's how I don't even know that. And I've known you for so long. That's
Yeah.
a great
Yeah.
story. So that cracked your heart open. And then you were like, hey, I
Oh,
should probably stop killing myself with alcohol.
well, I mean, like a good addict, I was like, I want more of that. Like, what is that?
Preach.
Give me more of that.
I know. I got so addicted to spirituality. I mean, still, I'm like, I'll be a shaman. I'll be a Reiki healer.
Yeah. Of course, that is a very common experience, because yeah, we love that feeling, and we love feeling good, and we love helping people, and it can all, that's like a whole other podcast in and of itself. But so for me, what the other additional God shot was that later, so I hear this meditation, I experience 10 seconds of peace.
Mm.
I want more of that, not really sure what that looks like. But as I'm walking through the halls, no joke, I trip over a book that's just laying on the ground or something. And it is the woman who had just led that meditation. Her name is Aruni Nan. She wrote a book about being a woman getting sober in New York City.
Stop it.
And at that moment, I like look up at the sky, which at that point was, where I was finding God. And I was like, all right,
All
I
right.
get it.
I
You're
hear
not
you.
subtle. The
So
good old,
fast forward. And so then you started this great company, Do You Mindfully?
yeah. So just, yeah, to steamroll that along. So from that day forward, I started practicing meditation. I kind of followed what was in the book, which was, talking about meditation, talking about recovery. So I started practicing that on my own. That was a part of what Humpty Dumpty put me back together again. And so I was practicing these tools and then wanting to deepen the practice. So I was doing the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is an 8-week program founded by John Kabat-Zinn, which has been around for over 40 years and a lot of clinical background, because for me, I like the blend of the woo-woo and the science.
Yeah.
So I love that there was the evidentiary support behind it. So I was studying that at the time that said Atlantic City trip occurred. So it was just one of those moments where I had such clarity that this would have looked so different if I didn't have these skills. And I was very clear that I wanted to share that with other people.
Mm.
So I went and did it, like I said, more training, and then launched the business. And my intention with the business was to work in corporate wellness, because again, like I knew when I was this publicist, I had this dream job and I had zero coping skills.
Mm.
I had nothing. So my coping skills were 2 bottles of wine every night, at least. So I wanted to speak to employees and people like me and try to offer them some skills. And so that's what I've been doing for the last almost decade. And so that was really great and going really well. And then the pandemic hit. And I've never experienced so much anxiety in my entire life.
Yeah.
And what I found was that,
What was your anxiety around it in that 2020 to 2023? Like what were you anxious of? I mean, not to make assumptions. I'm always like, assess, don't assume. That's what my teaching says.
yeah. No, I was terrified that my parents and my boyfriend were going to die. It was just like a loop, or I was going to somehow inadvertently kill somebody else,
With
give
COVID.
them COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was just,
So deep and dark.
whew,
Just like us on the balcony. Deep and dark.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I run that way. I just had to lean in. I run deep and dark.
It's
Once I
so
lean into it, I can really lighten up, you know, because I'm also very fun, but I run deep and dark like that.
right. Yeah. I like to think I'm a fun person with a sense of
Me,
humor, but yes.
I find you to be extremely fun. I just always, you know, Brene Brown talks about it so much of like, you know, I got this puppy and I just think, you know, well, what happens when he dies?
100%. 100%.
I can move myself out of it, of course, but like it's just my initial thought. I'm like, but he's gonna die
Yep.
and he's gonna get
Yep.
old. And I'm like,
Yep.
can you just come back? I was like postpartum when I got my dog. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm made for this. And here
Oh
we
my gosh. I quite honestly, I was pretty clear I didn't want to have children after getting the dog because I was like, my heart is ripped open. I don't think I could handle this on a
are.
bigger level.
I was
Like,
literally postpartum. I would just lay on the floor and call my friend Michelle and be like, what did I do? I'm like, you know, I'm like a canary in a coal mine. I'm just like, I am just so extra. I lean into this extra.
yeah.
I lean into this extra, but it's why I
Yeah.
need to have, you know, meditation practices. So there was COVID and the anxiety was out of, what was it like having that kind of anxiety and then teaching mindfulness and meditation?
Well, in some ways, I was so grateful for the career and the skills I had because it kept me connected in a way that, again, I think it would have been another version of the balcony where I'm like, well, I could just,
Yeah.
I don't have to. And then I know some people who that was a choice early on. Like, I don't want to go through this and the isolation and people relapsing all over the
Well,
place.
yeah,
Like,
I mean, that was the other thing. I feel like when I'm listening to a podcast, I'm just thinking about myself. I mean, I think the other thing, you're a mindfulness and meditation teacher, but you and I also have like a big raging fellowship of people that, you know, I spend a lot of time in circles or I try to. And when I don't, I get spiritually sick
oh,
personally.
yeah. Oh,
So you
yeah.
were like, not just at work, you were also in community on Zoom.
Yes.
I just,
Yeah.
if you're listening, we're really giving you some hard skills right now.
Yeah. Yes.
If you don't have
Absolutely.
circles, try to find some circles.
Absolutely. That was one of the things almost immediately, like the day New York shut down. I remember I was on a gratitude list with a couple of people and I said, I just like set the bat signal and was like, can we just, this little group here, can we just make this a quick Zoom meeting?
Mm,
And now 3 years later, that meeting has continued every single week, which
wow.
is pretty wild. But it was one of those things where it was like, I just needed the people I trusted and knew and didn't want to like think any harder than, okay, hey, let's just, and it wasn't like those people were necessarily my closest friends at the time. It was
Right.
just
That's a
like
really good point. No,
rally
no,
the
it's like, but
troops.
we really need, I mean, the thing about anxiety, I think it's so lessened when you have community, like, you know, you just have people to
Absolutely.
bounce it off of. Gosh, I would never have kept that dog if it wasn't for my my spiritual guide is like, you can make a decision in a month. Keep the dog for a month. If you
Yeah.
Beth, you know her, you still don't like the dog in a month. And it was like, that's her main source of things for me and my anxiety. She's like, in a month, you can make that decision. In a
Mm,
month, that's like, and you know, she says that enough that sometimes that distortion comes in. And I say it to myself now, right? I'm like,
yeah.
not right now. Let's not make that. Seems we don't make good decisions impulsively, Molly.
Oh, 100%. That is, I always joke, my mentor Lisa, she's like my Jiminy Cricket, just right there.
Mm,
Where I'm like, what would she say?
yeah.
Right? What would she suggest
Yeah.
here?
Not right
But
now, Molly. Yeah.
and so that's, yeah, it thankfully I had a lot of skills at that point. I mean, I was coming up on 10 years sobriety. Um, I had the skills of recovery. I had meditation. I had yoga. I mean, it was like all the things, right? Crystals, oils, whatever, throw it in
Yeah.
the kitchen sink at it. Um, and I was also talking to God a lot, but
Mm,
I was very, very afraid. And um, I think a big turning point was the fact I was in a relationship for the first, a healthy relationship for the first time pretty much in my life.
Mm.
And I was petrified I was going to lose it. I just kept playing that scenario out over and over and over again. And then I had a yoga client who was in her 90s with not great health. And it was like those two things that I was ping ponging between, like, I'm going to lose him, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to lose him, I'm going to kill her. It's
Right.
like so awful. And I think it was, I was talking to a therapist, I was trying to do all the things, and there was this deep sense of fraud. Like, how are you not better? How are you not calmer? How are you not healthier? How are you, like, all of that.
Mm.
And that was, we talk about the second arrow in Buddhism. It's like, first arrow is the pain point, this thing that happened, like think about, oh, sorry, hit the mic there. You get hit by an arrow. The second arrow is the one you do to yourself, where you're sitting there like, why did I get hit by an arrow? Who gets hit by an arrow? Where's an arrow even coming from? Why do I walk in places that have arrows? Like judgment,
Yeah.
judgment, right?
Yeah.
So it was painful enough that I felt so afraid. And then I was
Yeah.
compiling
She
all
calls
of that.
Tara Brach calls it double wounding. I love it.
Yeah.
Right? The first arrow, we hit ourselves, then we have this open wound, and our judgment comes in and hits an open wound. And there's really no pain like that, our own self-harm.
Yeah. And so for me, two things I think are my takeaways now is what I did that was different was really, really lean into self-compassion practices, because I saw very quickly that, like, beating myself up for this pain was going to do nothing. And I even relied on the science. I mean, Brene Brown talking about, like, guilt can change behavior, shame, no. So shaming myself was didn't feel good and was also not effective. So
can you tell us about what Brene Brown says about guilt changes behaviors and shame doesn't? Do you know
so she was talking, obviously her research is around, she's a social scientist first. A lot of people are like, oh, she's a motivational speaker. She's, no, I'm a social scientist, right?
She's a researcher.
So the research she had done was around guilt being a helpful tool that can change and modify behavior. We can self-adjust, but the shame part, which is generally like our perception of ourself and our behavior, not just the differential being, oh, I did a bad thing versus I am a bad person.
Right. Guilt being I did a bad thing. Guilt, Marsha Linehan always says that the purpose of guilt is to, like, check in on your own values.
Yes.
So and sometimes, like, I use the example of, like, I can be like real, I mean, in my worst space, there are times in which I have been real shitty to wait staff. And then I think to myself, God, that was really crappy thing to do. And that's justified guilt. That's kicking in my value system to say, yeah, don't behave that way. Right. That's not an alignment. But shame would say you're a terrible person for doing that. And there's no coming back from that.
Right. Exactly. Which I think obviously is the nuance that we're missing quite a bit in social media land. that slight distinction of, you can do something, you can say something wrong, you can stick your foot in it, you can embarrass yourself, you can.
Yeah, because I think social media is also making it like guilt is a bad thing. Guilt is like, if you really lean into, like, justified guilt and unjustified guilt, and, like, let me look at my values. Is this how I want to be behaving? No. Okay. I mean, what I say to a lot of times to, like, my clients, like, we can't be over apologizing all the time too. Like,
right.
And if you're chronically in justified guilt, then you may want to change your behaviors a little bit more, right? Like, instead of apologizing all day for existing.
Yeah. And that's, and to me, when I talk to my clients about self-compassion, it's clear that when we are asking and we're practicing self-compassion, it is the question of what is in service of our highest or greatest or best self. And when you look at that like you would a kid, and it is not in service of a child or a dog to give them treats all day long, right? Because we hear that self-compassion piece, and it's the proverbial bonbons on the couch, right? Or like Netflix and a pint of Jerry's every day.
Right.
And instead it's to look at, well, is that actually in service of their best self? No, of course not. You need some vegetables and movement and balance.
Right.
But on the other end of the spectrum, it's not, so it can be firm, but not that critical, crushing, like, what a piece of shit you are. You sat on the couch today.
Mm,
Right. So trying to find, like, you can be firm without being cruel, and
I love
trying
that.
and
I love
trying to
that.
find
Well,
that.
because I think that is like about like, and certainly I think the audience, a lot of the audience that listens to this struggles or has struggled with like some food stuff, and food's so tricky
Mm.
because you have to eat it. And sometimes when I'm talking about ways to modify, someone say, well, isn't that a diet? Aren't just telling me to go on a diet. And I'm like, well, we got to have some guidelines if something's out of control. Like we
Yeah.
need some guardrails here. And I think the same to be said for, so, like what you're saying with self-compassion. It's like, yeah, like I want to try not to be cruel to people 100% of the time. And when I do, I want to be loving, reflective, kind to myself, say, oh, wow, something happened that just made that happen. Repair that out externally, repair that within yourself. So wait, I have a question. Now,
Yeah.
this is true that I have editors on this show and I can edit this out. So you can say to me, I don't want to talk about this. So I know to be true that that client died
Mm.
and then that relationship ended. And
Yes.
that's the real darkness. You don't want to talk about that
No, that's fine. That's fine. All my worst fears came true.
today, right in
And
this moment or in
no,
that
no,
moment.
no, 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 no. Oh my God,
You're
that's so
like,
funny. Yes,
I don't know if I
right
want to
now.
be friends with her
It's
anymore.
happening right now. I'm going to slam the computer shut. Bye. No.
My worst fears are coming true by asking that. Everyone's doing their work right now. Yeah, like that's the whole thing. Those two things happened to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
were a meditation teacher with all this
Yep.
anxiety about COVID. And you're living, breathing beauty on a screen. What happened?
I survived, right? Spoiler alert. I'm
Wow.
here.
Well, I mean, that is a spoiler alert because it didn't,
So
it was so dark and I was with you.
you were, and I appreciate that. And I want to say that to a lot of people too. It's like sometimes people don't pick up the phone, but like just knowing somebody is there, because we don't all cope with grief the same way, right?
I'd
And
gone through something so similar and I was listening to you talk about it. And I texted you and I said that. I said, listen, I don't know if you want to talk, but I'm here and I'm on the other side and I love you.
it
And
meant so much, and I wasn't ready to talk at that point, and yeah, I was still kind of reeling, but it meant so much, and I do appreciate that deeply, and I really mean that. Like it's so, I think some of the greatest things that happen in fellowship is that phrase, like, yeah, I've been through that, me too, like
yeah.
I know what
And
you're
for the listener, like I didn't personalize it at all. I talked to like 3 people when I was in that darkness, and I didn't, I got to choose who those people were. So what did you do? Like
yeah.
what
So
happened and what like you
right.
this is like you guys were like you had to separate like
Yeah.
houses. Like it was a big
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So we were planning on getting married,
Mm,
maybe talking children.
mm,
We had a dog. We lived in a house in the suburbs of New Jersey. It was, yeah, it was really, it was coming together, or so I thought. And I'll never forget this. It was a Wednesday night. We put in an offer for a house, and by Thursday morning we had broken up.
wow.
So,
Oof.
and that was like the 1st of August. And we had to be out of the house that we were currently in by the end. We had given notice we were going to be leaving this house because we were going to go buy another house or get a short-term rental, but we were buying a house. So we'd already given notice we were moving out of this one. And so now it's like we have 30 days to pack everything up and get out. And I have to find a place to live. He had a place to live. That's another story. But so we break up, and yeah, it's like I'm on the bathroom floor sobbing, right? It's
Yeah.
that kind of, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then panic. Where am I going to go? What about the dog? And then within a week after that, my client died. And then another dear friend had tried to commit suicide. It was really dark. And then the icing on the shit cake was we both got COVID. So,
So really all the fears happening.
all the fears at the same time.
Wow.
And so here we are, the two of us, we're stuck in the house together trying to pack up the house, and we are so sick, and it is just brutal, and trying to obviously take care of the dog as well as we're sick and packing up. It was just so crazy. But a couple of things happened there. For one, my therapist who I've been working, God bless her, Sarah Waters. I'm just going to give you a shout out because she's
Good job,
wonderful.
Sarah.
You
I
know,
love a good therapist.
She had been saying for a long time, like, hey, you have been wrestling with some anxiety issues, some other mental health issues, some complex PTSD, some DV stuff from the past, like,
what's DV stuff for those?
Some domestic violence stuff from earlier relationships, and she was recommending medication, and she had been recommending medication, and I was a hard no. I mean, I was like, hey, yoga and meditation and the oils, and no, I will like literally do anything to avoid this. And she was loving and patient and wasn't forcing me in any way. But the beauty of that really, really dark time was that it cracked open the door for me to say, you know what? I have been trying to manage this on my own and do all of the things. Maybe I should be willing to accept some additional help. And it was really hard as a teacher because I felt, again, that fraud piece come up. Like, you should be better than this.
Do you think it's not fraud? Do you think it's just shame?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You ever hear that one? Should have already mastered everything.
Shoulding all over yourself?
No, but that's SHAME.
Yeah, that's that's good. Should have already mastered everything. Oh my God, I'm gonna keep that with me. No, I've not heard that.
Yeah, pass it along. Actually, I just heard it somewhere, I didn't make it up. I wish I made that up.
I think that's in my entire life. You just wrapped up in an acronym.
It's a coaching call and you didn't even know it.
Oh my God, that's so good. I mean, that directs like my whole life choices. Oh, I'm going to pick basketball instead of soccer. I was just having this conversation with my father. Why? Because I was inherently good at basketball and I didn't want to do something I wasn't good at. So,
God, ain't that the story?
Oh my God, that's so funny. But yeah, so that was a
so you just picked up an extra tool.
Yeah.
But and like those meditation practices and mindfulness practices that you had, you weren't like, oh, I'm just going to go on meds and stop meditating every day, right?
No. Oh my God. And that's what I'm so glad we are talking about it, because that's what was so unbelievable to me in retrospect, was now I had the access to all of these tools and could actually implement them.
That's fascinating.
It was like all of a sudden it went from what I described, like Times Square, noise, everything's loud, everything's in your face. So, you're trying to, again, like if you use that as the example, you're trying to meditate in Times Square. Okay, you can do it. You can do it. You absolutely can do it with enough practice. But like, do you need to choose the hardest way?
Yeah.
Right. Do you need to try to have a conversation with yourself?
Listen, I have this, one of my team members, Liz, and I was really struggling. And she was like, listen, I just want to say, I think it should be easier for you. She said, it makes me sad that you're always taking cold showers and working so hard. And I made this decision to do ketamine assisted therapy in December. And I had the same experience. I mean, I was like, who knew? I said to my therapist, I didn't, and it's really changed my life, but and then last month I decided to stop meditating, and I got, really ugly. Like, it's not, there's this like childlike belief in many of us that there is an end point to healing, right? And dialectically, we're never healed, right? Like there's no end point.
Right.
So if you're chasing the end point, that's not the point. And if you're thinking one thing is going to, like, it's just a little bit more dynamic than that.
Yes.
And every now and then we like pick a little anxiety, man, do a little psychedelic journeying. Like, and this is how I feel about people with like their food plans, even like that changes too. It all changes. That's the only thing we got.
Absolutely. And that's where I think for me, I was definitely somebody who was living in extremes, like,
Mm.
obviously went from being the person who was taking every pill, doing all the things, to being like, no, my body is a pure temple. I
Yeah.
will put nothing in it, and boo to the pharmaceutical industry, and blah, 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 like just pendulum swing. And so for me, I think what this feels like is being more in the middle of like,
Mm.
okay, what is right for me, and seeing that, oh, I felt like I had me back.
Mhm.
Finally, the person who's like, oh, I can do breath work and I feel the difference.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
I,
you were so in such a trauma state that it wasn't even working. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
so into
it was,
polyvagal right now, by the way.
oh, oh my gosh.
I
And
know. Well,
that's it.
so is every listener because we just had someone on talking about it. And it's like, oof.
But that was the thing. I'd be doing exercises for the vagus nerve, and it'd be like, this isn't working. I'd be doing breath work and be like, this isn't working. Like
Mm.
nothing's working. And I'm more and more terrified. And yeah, it's such a
Well, you know
high.
what I found too, like, and I don't know, like in my times of darkness, it's like when I wasn't accepting, my own, spiritual, physical, emotional health, there was this really, and I was very good at my job as you are. And that was what felt fraudulent, was that I was able to be useful to others, but I needed a different kind of help. And they weren't like, I was making it like, well, if I can be helpful to others, I should be able to heal myself. And it's like, that's like, doesn't
Chiron,
make any sense at all.
the
Right. Like I can do
the
heart surgery, but I can't do it on myself. It's like, it doesn't make
right,
sense.
right, right. Well, it's the story of Chiron, right? The wounded
Tell
healer who
me.
can
Oh,
never.
I don't know that story.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So Chiron, the healer, who he is injured, and he spends his whole he's the basis for the medical profession, I believe, is like, it's
That's right.
that quest of you're always trying to heal that wound, that origin wound in yourself, and you can
Mm.
never heal. So you go out trying to help others in the hopes that also along the way brings some healing. But yeah, it's like that origin wound that is always there, and we can't heal ourselves. And
Mm.
that's, yeah, it's very humbling. But that's where kind of, again, I come back around to the self-compassion piece, where I could actually talk to myself and go, hey, you're really struggling.
Mm.
Let's try this out. Let's see how it feels.
Mm.
And if it doesn't align, doesn't work, we don't have to continue, right? We don't have to continue. And it doesn't make you less than, it doesn't make you fake, fraud, right? Like, let's just see what we can do here, and be willing to just give something else a try. You've done valiantly trying all these other things.
Mm.
Like, but also there's a line where it becomes martyrdom,
Well, that's
right?
like what Liz was saying. Liz is like, I feel like you work too hard and you're not
Yeah.
getting outcomes from it.
Right.
And it was like a really brave thing, I think, for her to say to me, just like your therapist, she's a therapist, just like your therapist to say that. And I was considering all of this, and she just said, I'm so glad you're doing that because I just don't think it should have to be so hard for you.
And thank you for saying that, because I think there is also, certainly in the recovery community, but just generally speaking, we kind of have this like puritanical
Yeah. I don't
structure.
even
It's like
take Advil. Yeah, I get
things
it.
must be
Yeah.
hard. Like,
Yeah. No, in that, by the way, that it's very addictive. It's very addictive in that, and it really reinforces the not enoughness. Like, right. Like if you think about that wound of like, well, I'm not, it's like, yeah, that'll really get you there quickly. How are
oh,
you now? What's
oh
going
my
on now?
gosh.
What have current, let's give us a current.
Yeah, yeah. So all my worst fears came true. And that
Yeah.
was something in and of itself, though, that was so freeing, because there they were. There they were. Like,
Yeah.
instead of being the boogeyman just hanging over my shoulder, it was like, I have lost this relationship and this woman has passed away. And then, just to add more to it, my dad got COVID too. So it was like
Right. So all the things you had
all the things,
COVID, you
all
maybe
the
even gave
things,
the boy all the things.
all the things. And what I saw was, for me, a higher power working in my life, because when I
Mhm.
was able to lean back, I knew that I was taken care of. There was a place I could stay. I had, a neighbor in New Jersey who was like, you want to move into my basement? I'm here. People like
Wow.
you reaching out, like I've been through this, so I could see people survive this. I knew that the woman who passed away, she was 97. She had lived an incredible life and she died in the best way possible. I mean, she was watching
Mm,
Turner classic movies surrounded by her family. Like that was her dream. So, and she was such a beautiful person. Um, so there was all of this, all of these gifts of like also realizing this relationship, I'd been holding him hostage. We were not meant to
mm,
be together. And
mm,
but we didn't want to let go. And that was freeing. Like he did for me what I couldn't do. He was
mm.
able to walk away.
Wow.
And that was,
That's a look, huh?
it was so painful, but ultimately I knew it was
So
the
freeing.
right, it
Sure.
was the right thing.
Sure.
And so in that, like there was a freedom in just walking through the things I was the most scared of. It's like, well, the worst things have happened. So,
Now what?
you know,
Yeah.
bring it on. Like what else? So that there is freedom in that happening. The other part was I ended up moving in with my mother at age 41. Me and the dog moved in with mom.
So you kept the dog. Actually was waiting to hear that.
Oh, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was very clear that that was
It's
that
your
was how
dog.
that was going to go. And we talked about the co-parenting, but it was just like
No.
no,
Yeah.
no. And so I moved to Boston. I moved in with my mom, which I thought was going to be for about 6 weeks. It has now been 9 months,
Mm,
and she lives on the beach. And what I, again, for me, it's like good orderly direction, but for me also great outdoors.
mm,
And seeing the rhythm and the pull of nature, seeing the Fibonacci sequence in the shells, seeing
mm,
the tides, seeing the sunrise, and like being
mm,
there and just like, oh, I'm not in charge. There is something else
mm,
here. And even the whole COVID thing, when I got to Boston, the day after I got there, my dad got COVID. And because I had just recovered from it, I could go be with him. I could go change his meds. I could go help him so he could not be alone because he's got dementia and like help him.
mm,
I could show up. It was these moments where I was like, if all of this crap hadn't happened and we didn't break up and I wasn't forced to move to Massachusetts and got COVID, I wouldn't be here in this moment to help him.
mm, I'm finding this prayer I used to read. God, it's so good. Okay. Should we end the podcast with this prayer? It's
Absolutely.
from Carolyn Mace. It reminds me exactly of what you're saying. I'm
Mm,
obsessed with you. All right. She says, Carolyn Mace is a big God person. So, I mean, shut off the podcast, but this is the best prayer. It's from her book. I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send you this book. I didn't even tell you a book. What's it called? Divine Grace, something, Prayers with Divine Grace. I forget. And I'll put it in the show notes, everybody. She says, Lord, grant me the grace of wonder. Rather than fearing change and the unknown, let me embrace the unknown with a sense of wonder. Instead of closing down and fearing the worst, let the grace of wonder open my imagination and my senses. Life runs on cycles. All things come to an end, and yet every end means a new beginning. Beginnings are filled with opportunities to make different choices, to reboot, to start anew. Lord, let the grace of wonder flow abundantly in my psyche and my soul, especially in times when I feel most vulnerable.
mm,
Isn't that just what you're into right now?
mm.
It's beautiful.
I
I
mean,
mean, I learned everything. I learned
not
everything today.
not that I want to follow that prayer, but I feel like it's important to say to the listener that objectively one might look at my life right now compared to a year ago and go, man, not as good, right?
Mm,
I feel the happiest I have felt in years. The most, and actually happy maybe is a loaded word, total contentment and gratitude. That feeling where you walk outside and just even the wind in the trees and the bird song is just like could bring you to tears kind of gratitude.
Wow. Well, it's
So
enough, because it's enough now. You're not a little duck underwater anymore, like, that's beautiful, Lindsay. See, I knew it would have nothing to do with what we were supposed to talk about. It's beautiful. I mean, changed my life. So I hope everyone else likes it.
and
And
thank
you
you,
can
and I
go
love
work with
you.
Lindsay. Lindsay's a
Thank you.
great meditation coach to work with. I've sent lots of people to her, and I love
Yes,
her
you
very
have.
much.
Thank
And thank
you.
you so much for coming and being with us today, my love.